Hi, I'm Adele Merson, political editor of the Press and Journal. I'm here today at the Capitol building in Aberdeen at E-FWD's Grid event with Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar. Thanks for joining us, Anna.
My pleasure. How are you?
I just want to start off by asking you, events like tonight that we run at E-FWD, they're more about finding the solutions to the problems that the energy sector faces. What do you make of events like that? Are you pleased to be here?
Well, absolutely. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be here for the Q&A and the other sessions, but I'm hoping to get a chance to mingle and chat with people once the formal part of the event is over. And I think it's really important actually because there's been so much conversation and debate about Scotland's energy future and what that means for Aberdeen, what it means for the North East, what it means for wider Scotland and indeed the UK. And I've always had the view that if we are to meet our net zero ambitions, if we are to deliver that just transition, then it has to be a genuine partnership between the oil and gas industry, the renewable industry, government at every level, as well as local authorities. Given how much grid innovation is going to be required, we have to expand the grid by pretty much what we've done in the last 50 years and over the next 6 years if we're to meet our ambitions around clean energy by 2030. We've got to sort our planning system out if we are to get the level of scale up that we need. We need to inspire confidence within the oil and gas sector and the wider renewables industry if we want them to make the big strategic investments we need them to make if we are to realise our ambitions. And then that needs to be backed up by government priority as well as government investment. And that's why it's a big key part of our plans, both in the run-up to this general election campaign and beyond. So I'm really looking forward to having those conversations.
And we've heard a lot already through this general election campaign about the investment analysts that warned that up to 100,000 jobs in the North Sea could be at risk. And obviously Unite the Union, they've also said it'll leave oil and gas workers on the scrap heap. What is your kind of response to those workers, which there's thousands in the North East who might be, I guess, fearful about the plans?
Well, I'd say directly to workers here in Aberdeen, the North East, and indeed across the country, that we have been absolutely clear. There will be no cliff edge. There will be no turning off the tap. Oil and gas will play a significant role for decades to come. We all agree there needs to be a transition, and I can understand nervousness after 14 years of broken promises from a UK government and 17 years of broken promises by a Scottish government. And we are not going to make that same mistake. We want to build a genuine partnership. We want to have skin in the game with you. That's why we will set up GB Energy, a publicly owned energy generation company headquartered right here in Scotland. Not because we think all the investment can be done by government alone, far from it. Neither is it some kind of ideological attempt to nationalise the energy industry. What it is putting government's skin in the game so you know you have a government whose priority is to deliver that transition, and that priority will not change because they've got skin in the game itself. It's backed up by the strength of a UK Treasury to get those investments and to try and give confidence to other people to invest in that as well. And it's going to make investments in our onshore wind, offshore wind, hydrogen, carbon capture storage, renewables hub, a transition hub rather, in Grangemouth, investing in our port infrastructure, investing in our supply chains. Because one of the concerns that many businesses are involved in our energy sector have rightly highlighted is if you look at the renewables jobs of the future, the large scale jobs is actually in the manufacturing side and in the supply chain side. And the vast majority of the components that come into form our renewables industry is actually coming from out with the UK. We have got to build those supply chains here so we can build the large scale jobs here. We've also got to expand our ports if we are going to be able to do what we want to do offshore as significantly as we want to do it. And that's what this is about, genuine partnership, delivery, and we genuinely believe that this is a plan that's good for Aberdeen and the North East, good for Scotland, good for the UK, and it would generate 69,000 jobs, 53,000 from GB Energy and the work we think it can do, and another 16,000 with our Warm Homes plan. So GB Energy focused on investing to get more cleaner, cheaper energy developed, and then our Warm Homes plan, which is about trying to retrofit homes in order to reduce consumption, as well as helping to bring down people's bills. And all of our energy policy will be guided by 4 principles: more jobs, lower bills, greater energy security, so we're not reliant on expensive imports from despotic regimes like Russia, and climate leadership, so we can maximise and realise Scotland's huge energy potential. That's something that fills us with excitement. We recognise there's challenges, and that's why it's a genuine partnership, a genuine collaboration, and together we can deliver this.
And you talked there about getting those, the fear is that the oil and gas jobs, fall apart too quickly, and then there aren't those green jobs available at scale. Both governments, I would say, have failed to accelerate that in terms of the number of renewable jobs. What can a Labour government offer to fix that, I guess?
Yeah, well, you're right. I think one of the big concerns is that the two governments have failed to accelerate that and demonstrate to people that those jobs exist. One of the things we will not allow to happen is what happened with the mining industry and previous governments, and one previous government in particular, that made promises. Promises weren't kept. The mining industry was shut down. People lost their jobs. Families suffered. Communities were decimated. And many of those communities live in poverty to this day. And I don't think it's acceptable to say to people that, don't worry, the jobs will come. That's not going to be the approach. We have to deliver the jobs, we have to work in partnership, and we have to make sure that the transition is delivered in partnership, so we are protecting jobs, protecting livelihoods, protecting families, and continue to see the economic potential of the Northeast absolutely realised. And that's what we want to try and build. This is not, as I say, some kind of ideological attempt to move away from oil and gas. This is the right thing for us to do economically, the right thing for us to do in terms of meeting our net zero ambitions, but it's one that has to be done in partnership with workers, trade unions, companies, and the wider region if we are going to make this a reality.
And can you understand why people perhaps don't trust politicians given what has
Absolutely.
happened in the
I'm
past?
a politician and I've struggled to trust politicians in both our governments over a long period of time, so I totally get it. I totally understand that trust in politics is an all-time low. I totally understand why people hear politicians make lots of big promises that don't then come to fruition, and therefore are then suspicious of politicians who make promises that follow that. And that's why we are not going into this election campaign saying we're going to fix everything on day one. We're being very methodical. We realise this is lots of different stages. And the early part of the stage is, as I say, building that relationship, building that dialogue, and making sure we do this in a genuine partnership. Because it's only going to work if it's a partnership. And let me emphasise what I mean by that. If we are to get the large-scale investment we required to realise our net zero and just transition ambitions, then that requires those that are currently in oil and gas and those that are currently in our renewables industry to make those large-scale strategic investments if we are to realise that ambition. That's the first thing. The second thing is we've got to recognise is that we are competing with other parts of the UK, other parts of Europe, other parts of the world for the same pots of investment. And so how do we create, so when people that are on representatives of these companies go to their global boards pitching for investment here in Scotland, how do we support them so they have a strategic advantage going into those boardrooms to have those negotiations and to get those people to agree for that investment to come to Scotland or come to the UK? I completely recognise that's what we have to do, and that's why we want to build that genuine partnership. Strategic direction from the top, in partnership with business, staying in it for the long haul, not changing our minds a million times, making sure we have the grid infrastructure we need to make this a reality, making sure we're reforming our planning system so we aren't holding people back, because one of the big reasons why investment's going somewhere else is our planning process is so slow here when there's a much speedier, more welcoming approach in other parts of the world. We've got to make that happen. Giving economic stability so people have the confidence to invest the money here knowing that they will get a positive return. And then also making sure we're strengthening those supply chains and infrastructure, import infrastructure and the rest, to create those large-scale jobs for the future. This all has to be a joint-up, coordinated plan. And again, I emphasise, that can't be left to government alone, or indeed one government, two governments, or even with local government. That has to be a genuine partnership with the industry, with businesses, with the workers and with the trade unions if we are to realise our ambitions.
And just back to GB Energies, obviously there's been some confusion, I think, over what it actually is. So I'd be interested just in if you could explain that to us, and also how you can see it actually reducing household bills.
So just on in terms of what it is, I realise there were some of our political opponents an attempt to muddy the waters of what GB Energy is. Let's be really clear. When we talk about GB Energy being a publicly owned energy generation company, it's not that we're going to have Keir Starmer going out to wind up all the wind farms and generate energy. It's the wind turbines that generate energy, not the companies that invest in those wind turbines. But the company that invests in those turbines, and those turbines create the energy, you make a profit from that energy, and obviously the profits of that go to those that made the investments. And then we can choose with that investment and the profits that are made, whether that goes to community benefit, whether it goes to other investments, whether it goes to support local, other projects around local government, for example. That's the approach we will take. We want to make the strategic investments that help leverage in many, many, many more multipliers of private sector money in order to realise our ambitions in terms of the scale of investment we need. That's what it'll be. It'll look at the port infrastructure and the supply chains in the short term, and then in the medium to longer term, as it ramps up, we wanted to be making those strategic investments to make this a reality.
And I can't go through this interview without saying, in terms of the location, it's a no-brainer that it's got to be in Aberdeen.
Look, there's lots of people making lots of pitches for where it should be. When I'm in Glasgow, lots of people say it should be in Glasgow. When I'm in Inverclyde, lots of people say it should be in Inverclyde. In Fife, the same. In Edinburgh, the same. And in Aberdeen, obviously, the same as well. What I would say is there's a very strong case for Aberdeen. Aberdeen is an energy hub here for Scotland and the UK, indeed in Europe. But we will make decisions about where it's headquartered. We know it will be headquartered in Scotland, but in terms of whereabouts in Scotland, obviously as part of the process of setting up GB Energy, we'll be much clearer about that. But as I say, I recognise why people are making a strong case for Aberdeen.
Thank you for joining us with Anna Sarwar today. You can read more about it on E-FWD.